This video, I spend way too much time collecting stats and analysing Minecraft tournament. Can I predict stuff accurately, or will I be wrong? This is an MCC 12 analysis. Also, only a small percentage of people who watch my videos are actually subscribed, so if you end up enjoying the video, consider subscribing. It's free and you can also unsubscribe later. Enjoy! Can you tell I'm running out of new ways to introduce these videos? Let's not faff about then, disclaimers are all running on screen. Now let's get into the objective analysis of the MCC 12 teams, or the birthday MCC. And just a PSA, these are not my predictions, those are at the end of the video. Alright, in last place statistically we have the Aqua Axolotls. This team, although having some much higher than average scores from False and Ren in survival games, and F-Whip and False in Ace Race, only really does well consistently in Build Mart. In most, if not all, movement-based games, with Ace Race being a notable exception, all of the Axolotls underperform to a considerable margin in games like Parkour Warrior or To Get to the Other Side. In addition to this, Bingo is also a game in which False, Ren and Grian all underperform, though this is slightly mitigated by F-Whip getting the much higher score than average. All in all, the Axolotls don't perform that well on average in movement-based games, which is what really puts them in last place. I should mention here that the teams this MCC are incredibly balanced. There's just 50 unmultiplied coins in between 10th place and 1st place, and this means that it's really just everyone's game to lose on the day of the tournament. Next up, we have the most surprising stats placement of this MCC in my opinion, the Red Rabbits. At first glance, this looks like a top 5 team, and it probably will be a top 5 team, but it's not represented very well in the numbers for a few reasons. First, Wisp is an average for this team, though given his content he'd probably do well above average, so he's slightly misrepresented here. Apart from this, Tubbo, after being in 3 MCCs, has had 1 outstanding performance and 2 decidedly disappointing ones. His average is much lower than his potential because he underperformed in both MCC 10 and 11. Lastly, Quackity has only played in 1 MCC before. This means that he's an average in some games, and he performed below the event average in every single one of the games which he did play in MCC 10, with the only notable exception being the split game, Sands of Time. Again, Tommy is the main reason this team beats out Aqua because he has some games in which he does extremely well, like Sky Battle, survival games, and To Get to the Other Side. Coming in at just 6 unmultiplied coins ahead of the Rabbits, we have the Blue Bats. I can basically guarantee to you now that this team won't place in this place in the actual tournament, since 2 of its best players, Illumina and Puns, are averages. Puffy and Kara are good at the tournament, sure, but even when accounting for their experience, Puns and Illumina will almost certainly beat them out in most games, but instead are averages since they haven't played before. In fact, I'd even go so far as to say that Puns won't even be affected by the experience disadvantage, because he's reviewed hours of VODs on stream, and from my experience as a tester, if you watch enough MCC and are actually paying attention on how to do well, you don't really have that much of a hands-on experience playing disadvantage, even in games like Ace Race, which are supposed to be hellishly hard for first timers. In 7th place though, we have the Lime Llamas. This team is again extremely close to 8th place with just an unmultiplied coin difference of 3 coins, and the main reason for this is because within the Lime Llamas, 2 of the members tend to be slightly above average, and 1 is a fair bit below average in every single game, and in every single game, Fruitberries lifts the lower player up, and thereby lowers himself down to the level of average or sometimes even above average, which was just enough for this team to snag those extra coins needed to get 7th. The Orange Ocelots come in at 6th, surprisingly. The Dream SMP team, as some people have been calling it, manages to pull away and get 6th place, simply because of H and Fundy's scores and movement being pretty far above average, with H in particular managing to pull Carl up to an above average player, and Fundy doing similarly for Eret, though to a lesser extent since Eret has a higher score on his own. This team does extremely well in both Bingo and Hole in the Wall, as Carl is an average for Bingo and Fundy is one of the best Hole in the Wall players in the tournament. And this team might also even do better than expected in Hole in the Wall, because HBomb's average has been really badly affected by a few really bad rounds or games, and therefore his skill isn't very fairly represented by his average score. In 5th place though, we have the Yellow Yaks. This team is actually being quite underrated in most of the other predictions I've seen, and I think that 5th place is actually quite a fair place to keep them. Quig is, well, a god, and SB and Ryguy Rocky are both amongst the most slept on players in the entire tournament. There's not much to say here, the other averages on the team are fairly normal, with the only notable anomaly being a big spike in the average for Parkour Warrior, as both SB and Ryguy Rocky beat out the average by a significant amount. Before we move on to 4th place though, could you do me a favor and like the video? I'm trying an algorithmic experiment, so you could help me to try and absolutely destroy YouTube's day. Please leave a like. Anyway, next we come to the team which just missed the podium for stats. The team in 4th place by a margin of just 13 unmultiplied coins is the Cyan Creepers. This team does pretty well overall, with Pizza Hut bringing the team up from an average team to a top 4 team simply with his movement scores once again, and CBK being one of the most consistent players in the tournament, getting a top 20 spot nearly every single MCC, and is better than the average in quite a lot of games which can be practiced, like Parkour Warrior and survival games. Solidarity or Jimmy is also a really good player for where most people place him. Having played in a fair few for fun teams, Jimmy's average is really badly affected, but he still managed to pull some higher than average scores in Ace Race, for example. Pete and Lauren sort of cancel out, similar to Pete and James in MCC 11, though Lauren played in MCC 5 and not MCC 4, and Pete pulls Lauren up to above average in most of the games that she played in MCC 5, and can pull up the team as a whole in the games that Lauren didn't play. I think it's also worth mentioning that Lauren tweeted that she would be trying not to be the worst in her team, so if she does practice a lot, this team has a lot of potential. Third place, arguably the most annoying place to get, is claimed by the Purple Pandas, who miss out on the stats-wise Dodgebolt by just 5 coins. This team is really carried by Smajor and Sapnap, both of whom are among the best players in the tournament, though Scott does tend to get slept on a fair amount. Notably, this team gets first in PvP based games, but drops the ball in movement games, probably because of Dan not performing that well in Parkour and Ace Race, as MCC 10 was his first MCC. Shovel also does very well, but again loses crucial points in Ace Race, Sands of Time, and Bingo. Then, the silver medal for MCC 12, just half a coin away from first place, we have the Pink Parrots. Both Michael McChill and Spiffy, though they're regarded by most as nerfs, are actually fairly average players, with scores that fluctuate around the average, and have pretty high scores in To Get to the Other Side and Parkour Warrior respectively, which pull their overall averages up to just a little above average. CaptainSparkles consistently performs above average and is easily a top 15 player, specializing in games like Parkour Warrior and Ace Race, but this team is really pulled up to second place by Dream, who gets above average in every single game and single-handedly gets enough coins to cancel out Spiffy and Michael's lower scores and still pull the team's average up as well. And this leaves us with the Green Guardians, who take first place. The main reason this team does so well is because of consistency. Where the Pink Parrots had one player like Dream to really boost their average, this team does consistently very well in almost every game, and each player specializes in separate areas of the tournament, which helps this team to be consistent and to get 250 plus average coins for every single member, both PvP and movement based games. Phil and George actually do the best on this team in terms of high scores across the board, though Tapple and Wilbur are there for games like Sky Battle, in which Phil doesn't have that high of a score. So yeah, those were the stats-based rankings for MCC 12. Again, those weren't my predictions, so if you want to hear those, do stick around to the end of the video. Also, if you want to hear a bit more behind the scenes about how I made the spreadsheet, and more importantly, the multiple mistakes that I made in my previous videos, which caused some confusion to say the very least, stick around to the very end. I know a lot of you don't want to hear that kind of stuff, so I'm going to whack it there to not interrupt this flow. Anyway, let's move on to a subjective analysis of each team now, so whack that sign up there in the corner. Beginning with the Red Rabbits. This team is a fairly homogeneous mix of friends from the Dream SMP, the SBI kind of group, with the exception of Wisp, so I highly doubt that this team will have any chemistry or communication problems. In addition to this, Wisp and Tommy have a lot of history and prior knowledge of each other thanks to SMP Earth, so again, I can see Tommy leading this team to victory, which has a well above average chemistry in my opinion. Next, let's talk Lime Llamas. This team got really heavily underrated stats-wise, so I just want to mention here that they'll probably do much better than their stats suggested. Pearlescent Moon has also said on the Reddit that she's getting more and more people recognizing her hole-in-the-wall skill, and that she'd try her best to perform to their standards if the game is picked. As for chemistry, Cobb and Pearl would probably have good chemistry, having known each other from both being connected to Hermitcraft pretty strongly, and Pearl and Joel have already teamed before, as have Joel and Cobb, so I really don't see this team having that many chemistry issues either, though communication might be an issue as all of these players tend to be more on the reserved side. When a team is being called the Dream SMP team, it's fairly obvious that they won't have any chemistry issues. The Orange Ocelots are all well acquainted with each other from the Dream SMP, and since this team is made up of less memey people, I swear I mean that in the nicest way possible, I don't think the team will have many communications issues either. It's a similar story with the Green Guardians. Although the members of this team aren't all a part of a singular SMP, they're all in very similar circles and are bound to know each other. I can see either Tapple or Phil leading this team. The only problem that might arise, in my opinion though, is with Tapple and the rest of the team, as they haven't interacted that much, though the chances of this happening are extremely small. And obviously this means on camera, I have no idea what they do off camera. The Yellow Yaks are the most underrated team of this MCC, and there's no doubt about it. This is SB737's best team yet, yet, Dry Guy Rocky consistently performs well, and Gizzy Gaza has said himself that he'll be trying really hard for this MCC. So with Quig as team leader, I can see this team coordinating really well and coming in the top 4 despite what the stats might say. The Axolotls, again, probably won't have any chemistry problems at all. False, Ren and Green are all Hermitcraft members, and F-Whip is noticeably similar to all of them in both playstyle, kills and the content he makes. I can see False leading this team in high intensity PvP situations, but Grian being more loud, taking the lead in more relaxed games. After the Yellow Yaks, the stats probably underrate the Blue Bats the most. Puns and Illumina, although first time players, are definitely in the top tier of Minecraft players and won't get the averages that the stats say they will. Puns has also been practicing a fair amount with his teammates like Puffy, so chemistry and coordination, which might have otherwise been an issue for the Bats, likely won't show up. I can see this team easily netting a 3rd place spot with good game order, and if Illumina practices and studies to the same degree that Puns is doing. The Cyan Creepers at first glance look like they might run into chemistry issues, but on further inspection this probably won't be the case. Lauren, having only played one MCC before, might take a game or two to readjust in the beginning, but CPK and Jimmy both know how to support strong players, and with them as a solid foundation, Pete as leader and Lauren, as she said, trying her best, I don't see this team having that many problems either. This team probably has the most tenuous chemistry though, so do bear that in mind. The Purple Pandas are all fairly similar in style and mindset, and the only problem I can see is Sapnap's competitive spirit maybe getting the better of him in a team of players that are generally more laid back. They'll probably be able to communicate effectively, but I feel that Scott will be extremely important to this team's chemistry to help coordinate the team and keep morale high, and will also be a good mediator for any issues that might arise out of competitiveness. Lastly, we have the Pink Parrots. Dream and Michael have teamed before in the infamous MCC8 team, but Spivey and the Captain are new additions to this dynamic. It's pretty fair to assume that CaptainSparkles and Dream will have a good dynamic since they tend to excel in similar games and talk to the same people, on camera of course. Spivey showed in MCC9 that he can fit in fairly well to any team, and Sparkles and Michael have also talked a lot before on SMP Live and in MCU where they were teamed. All in all, fairly middling team chemistry and communication, with Dream as the obvious leader. Lastly then, let's talk about the individual games. The best team for Bingo is the Orange Ocelots, followed by the Blue Bats. The best player in Bingo is actually F-Whip, with a massive 465 average points unmultiplied, and around a 70 point lead over HBomb, who gets second. Hole in the Wall is claimed by the Cyan Creepers, who are followed by the Yellow Yaks, and it's no surprise that 1st place individual goes to Pete, but shockingly, 2nd place goes to Fundy, who beats out Quig by just 2 coins. Cyan is followed by Lime in Build Mart, and 1st and 2nd place go to Pete, and quite surprisingly, Fruit. Although this does make sense given Fruit's been getting put on a lot of teams which specialise in Build Mart recently. Sapnap beats out Pete for 1st place in Sands of Time, and also nets the Purple Pandas 1st place in Sands of Time, where they're followed by the Orange Ocelots. Pete reclaims his crown as the Ace Race King, whereas Fruit claims 2nd place in Ace Race, though only Pete is able to lead his team, the Cyan Creepers, to 1st in Ace Race, where they're followed by the Green Guardians. The Pink Parrots win to get to the other side thanks to Dream getting 1st individual, and are followed by the Green Guardians and Fundy in 2nd respectively. Yellow gets beaten out by Pink for 1st in Parkour Warrior, and Dream beats Pete out for the title of 1st individual in Parkour Warrior. Aqua, having a lot of the MCC9 Blue Bats, tried valiantly to win survival games, but is beaten out by the Purple Pandas. Dream claims 1st place individually, only just managing to scrape it out of Fruitberry's hands, who gets 2nd place. Pete and Quig claim 1st and 2nd respectively for Rocket's Leaf, and Quig manages to lead the Yellow Yaks to 1st in Rocket's Leaf, whereas Pete trails behind and allows the Pink Parrots to snag 2nd place. Sky Battle is won by the Green Guardians, who are closely followed by the Purple Pandas, who also have the 2nd place Sky Battle player, Sapnap, who is left in the dust by Dream when he gets 1st in Sky Battle. So those are all of the games broken down, so now let me talk a little bit about what needs to be said, how I made this spreadsheet, and the mistakes I made in my previous video. Alright, so let's start off with my mistakes, because there are almost too many to count. First, I was scoring Ace Race completely wrong and giving participants almost 3 times more coins than they should be given, which massively skewed the stats in favour of those who were good at Ace Race. In addition to this, a lot of my formulas, which I used to average in the spreadsheet, were wrong as they gave certain games too much precedence and valued their individual averages the same as multiple other game averages. And finally, the main mistake I made was the way I was getting my averages, because what I used to do was take the previous averages, multiply them, and thus try to correct for the newer scores. And that method was just completely mathematically wrong, and led to a lot of corruption in the data over time. Which leads me on to the new spreadsheet I made. Here I have a shout out to give to, I think it's pronounced Dragon Bloon? He's one of the most knowledgeable MCC statisticians around, and he helped to no end to put together scores for my new spreadsheet. Basically, I compiled individual scores from MCC 8 till MCC 11 in one place, and also got the averages from MCC 1 to 7 from u/JTFL3's Reddit spreadsheet, and was going to use the average of those scores to get the new scores. There were two more problems though. Some of the MCC 1 to 7 stats were not 100% correct, since they were averages of team scores from the earlier MCCs, and also it would be unfair to value one MCC like MCC 8 as equal to the average of 7 other MCCs. So me and Dragon sat down and compiled individual scores from the earlier MCCs, re-averaged, and used those stats instead. I then changed the averaging formula to account for the MCC 1 to 7 average correctly by just repeating that data point in the formula the amount of times it had been played in the actual MCCs 1 to 7, and I think that makes sense. Dragon and quite a few other of the MCC statisticians I know have now confirmed and cross-checked my spreadsheet, so I don't think it's wrong anymore. So I think this is probably one of the most accurate spreadsheets that's out there right now, and again, big thanks to Dragon for all his help. Now, my predictions. I'm going to split this into Dodgebolt and Coin predictions, and we'll be ranking the top 4 of each team in each. If you disagree with my predictions though, feel free to leave a comment down below, and I will comment back telling you exactly why you're just objectively wrong, and I am the only person who is ever right about any of these things. I'm joking, obviously. Do I have to specify that I'm joking? I'm joking. Okay. For coins, I think that purple will get first, followed by green, and then blue, and then orange, and I think that's a fair assumption given the nature and makeup of those teams. But for Dodgebolt, I think that orange is the best candidate to win, followed by blue, then purple, and then green. And, yeah, that's it. Check out my Twitter if you want to see more of me and my live analysis of MCC 12 on the day, and as always, massive shout out to my channel members and a verbal thank you to those of you who are Wizard tier, including Thunderball101, Ender Pekka, and LeBron James. Again, I really do hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure to leave a like for the experiment, comment, share, subscribe, do all that good stuff, and I will see you in the next video. See ya!